construct. That wouldn't be right. Like that's a contradiction. Dead ass.
Okay, I don't know what you mean. They had different ideas of it. Every single person in every single writing was not identical. These were collections of writings designed for the sole purpose of simplistically categorizing people from different geographical regions in the globe.
Based
So
on their
everyone's
race.
conceptualization of that was going to be obviously a little bit different. But they all had the general idea of white superiority and served
No,
the
they
purpose
didn't.
of
You can't
perpetuating
prove
whites and
that.
European
You
superiority.
haven't proven
Yes,
that
they
at all.
did.
You haven't even provided a source for that, my guy.
Yeah, I mean, do you want me to bring up plenty of writings? I can bring up so many fucking writings about these European explorers and these race scientists.
Like how I brought up like 3 different sources in this conversation. I would love for you to do that, like at least one time.
While he does that, I do want to take a pause here and ask Maddie if she still remembers her question that she
sorry, Maddie.
asked.
Like that is, bro. Like, don't make claims that you can't back up.
All right, Maddie, go ahead.
Critically, I wanted to ask you, what's your definition of systematic racism?
Systematic or systemic?
Systematic. I have the way that I talk, I just pronounce words differently. So
no, that's fine. I just understand them to be different. So I'm just curious which one.
Systemic
racism. Or do you want me to just give systemic? Yeah. So I would say that I would say that systemic racism would be the perpetuation of the racial caste system through processes within systems or something like that.
So isn't that the same definition that you gave for individual racism? Or am I just hold on, y'all. I'm asking everyone but critically. Isn't that the same definition that he gave for individual racism? The same thing.
Nope. I can lay out the difference.
System. That's the same shit.
Yeah, so racism is perpetuating the racial caste system. That can be iterated in multiple different ways: systemic, systematic, or interpersonal. So something like systemic racism is just going to be any process that perpetuates this idea. So it could be in advertising, for example, is a form of systemic racism, where the practices, policies, and approaches to modeling or to other things like that highlight European phenotypes. So that's an example of systemic racism. Interpersonal racism could be people identifying what they consider to be like inferior racial characteristics or racial phenotypes, and saying that I'm going to mistreat people because of those specific characteristics. And then systematic is systemic actions that have intentionality behind them.
And I like the fact that even based on everything you just said, white people would still be able to face racism, even under that idea of racism that you just said. But
I don't see how the racial caste system has been set up. History is very fucking clear.
They are inferior based on what you think, like dead ass.
Mr. Murphy, the history is clear about the caste system.
Yeah, it's different in different societies. I agree. That's why it's subjective.
It's well, hold on. Just because it's different doesn't mean the caste system is confused.
I have a dumb question, and I want to say it's 2 questions. If a black person is being racist to an Asian person, is that because of white people then?
It's because of the historical. If they're being racist to them because they're Asian, or if they're discriminating against them because they're Asian, then yeah, absolutely, it's because of the historical precedents.
You don't know that, though.
Oh my gosh.
You keep making claims that you can't even prove. No. You can't say automatically the reason why the black person is being racist to the Asian person because of white supremacy. You can't prove that, right? It could be a whole bunch of different reasons, my guy. Like dead ass. So I don't know why.
Wait, hold on. Do you think what you think
racism is, and it's weird.
Can you give me any historical writings of like?
I don't have to.
No, real quick.
It's not relevant at all.
No, it is relevant, and I'll clarify why. So you're the entire. Hold on, real quick. The entire categorization.
You can prove that every single time a black person is racist to an Asian person, right? It's because of white supremacy. Then you couldn't make the claim that it's always because of white supremacy. You can't prove that, bro. Like at all.
Mr. Murphy, the entire categorization of Asian, whatever the fuck that category is, was developed specifically for the purpose of that original racial project.
Wait. The way that we operate racism in America, right? The census, is it based on...
Wait, hold on. I have a question. This might be just a misunderstanding upon your part. Do you think that before the 1400s... Sure, finish your question.
Based on the census, right? Do we base our racial construct on 200 years ago? Yes or no?
Upon 200 years ago, it's influenced by what's 200 years ago. Yeah.
No.
Absolutely.
You're such a snipe. Oh my! I'm trying my best not to insult you. Can you just answer the question? Based on our construct.
What do you mean? Okay, what do you mean by based? If you're meaning like we mirror it, if you mean we mirror it exactly, no. The way we've actually categorized things has shifted slightly over time, but it's still based around those original ideas. Yeah, sure.
But you once again, the reason why the black person is racist to the Asian person, right? You wouldn't know if that's based on the old construct. If we have a new social construct of race today in America. Like dead ass. Wait. A Latino person, right, or a Native American person is not going to be seen the same way today as they were like 200 years ago, or a white person.
I agree. Why is this relevant?
Because a person who's racist towards that individual, right, it could be because of a multitude of reasons based on how our racial construct is done today. That's the point I'm making, right? So you can't say automatically it's because of white supremacy.
Yeah, the racial construct. This applies to like, I don't know. This is an entirely irrelevant point. This applies to whiteness. The entire construct of like white as a racial group has changed over time. Originally, Irish and Italians weren't included in that, but for the purposes of maintaining supremacy, they included Irish and Italian people in that. So that, of course, these categories have shifted over time. But the entire purpose is that the caste system, even though the exact minutiae, the characterizations of the different categories has shifted, it's maintained the similar ethos, perpetuating European supremacy and whiteness. That's what it's maintained. And I want to clarify. And I want to. I mean, you want me to bring up shit tons of historical documents? We can talk about that all day. The actual people that study this, there's a reason why there's a consensus in the people who study this information. So I've got a question, Mr. Murphy. I got a question for you because I don't want you to miss. I want to have an understanding of how historical you are. Do you think that prior to introduction of colonialism in Africa, that sub-Saharan Africans thought of themselves as black? Do you think they categorized themselves as black?
Well, if you knew about African history, which you most likely don't, right? There have been
probably better than you, unfortunately. But sorry. Go ahead. Answer the question.
Goddamn,
Just answer the question.
Yeah, I'm about to right now. There are some historical references of African people, right, having some sort of idea of being black. For example, Mansa
Give me
Musa.
one.
I'm about to give you it if you let me finish, dude.
Sure, go for it.
Yeah, like Lord have mercy. So if you look at Mansa Musa's manuscripts, right, there's a beautiful book called African Dominion, Empires of African History, and there does seem to be some sort of like phenotypical racial construct where 420, please mute yourself, bro. I think you in the shower. He doing something. Yeah, but there were some references of black Africans connecting themselves to a particular figure in the Quran named Bilal, and when you go through those manuscripts, they tend to point out his like phenotype, like his being dark skin, looking a certain way. So
this isn't answering the question. So did black people consider themselves black in Africa before the introduction of colonialism?
Oh my God! If I could just finish, like dead ass, right?
You're not answering the question. You're saying they pointed out phenotypes. People point out phenotypes all the time. I'm asking a very specific question. People in Africa consider themselves black before the introduction of colonialism.
Well, so I don't think that would be like a necessary categorization because they were homogenous, right? You're saying like, oh, did they categorize themselves as different than?
They weren't homogenous.
So there was like a difference in skin color from white to black when it came to Africa before colonialism?
Not from white to black, but there was a whole range of skin colors in Africa. There's a whole range of phenotypes in Africa. There's a lot of diversity in Africa.
But they're all considered black, right?
By who?
But they're by themselves,
Answer
right? It was just African.
Before colonialism?
Yeah.
No, okay, give me one fucking historical source because that is completely wrong.
Right?
No, they did not. There wasn't a conceptualization of like an African or a sub-Saharan African race or a sub-Saharan African and Oceanian race in Africa or in Oceania prior to the introduction of colonialism. There were obviously understandings of ethnic groups and of cultural groups and all those other types.
Until they were introduced to some other, like why would there need to be distinction if there was no other yet?
Wait, what do you mean? Yeah, well, then you're getting the point then, yeah.
Yeah. Critically, I'm just saying, like, I was gonna like get to the point about how I understand that before colonialism, particularly in Africa, right? Because you asked, did they think themselves as black? That's what you asked me, okay?
Yep.
And I was just giving you historical examples from some of the stories
that aren't relevant to the. You muted Mr. Murphy, but the historical examples aren't relevant to the question that I asked. Identifying phenotypes is not the same thing as identifying yourself as part of a racial category. That's similar to any type of racial categories we have today.
Wait, so critically, like I'm assuming that your basis on racism is that like black people are racist because It'd be like
Wait, can you repeat that? Mr. Murphy's echoing.
Yeah, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm assuming that your position is that like racism is prejudice plus power, so black people can't be racist.
Not really. That's a little bit of a simplistic understanding of the sociological.
Let's see if you like agree with mine. Like I think that black people can be racist because racism is prejudice based on skin color. Like, would you agree with that?
Well, I think that black people can be racist, but it's probably not in the way you're thinking.
So from what I've learned from Critically believes, and correct me if I'm wrong, I don't want to push beliefs on you. He believes that everybody can be racist, or everybody can have racism caused against them except for white people.
I think that's wrong.
And anyone can perpetuate racism because I'm identifying, and why we care so much about race, why it's such a significant thing, is not because it's discriminating based upon phenotype. We have so many different examples of discriminating based upon phenotype that don't have any relevance within our conversations. The reason why it's relevant is because it was specifically iterated in a way that was generalizing, incredibly assumptuous, and took people from all over the globe in broad geographical categories, lumped them together and created associated traits. And through that, they were able to perpetuate colonialism, slavery, and a bunch of other shit. That's why we care about it. That's why it's historically relevant.
Yeah, and any racial group could do that. Any ethnic group could do that.
But I think that like the disagreement is mainly on like what racism, or like what we should qualify as racism, right? Because like the implication there is that like you have to have some negative impact on the group that you're being racist towards, which is why white people can't experience racism because a minority can't have.
It's not about negative impact.
Well, impact.
I don't care about negative impact.
Well, what about
yes, you do. Yes, you do. Because you're giving examples about it needs to be a long-term impact across the world for white people and different people.
Let's take negative out, right?
Hold on, real quick, Esau, real quick. Mr. Murphy, why do you think that he does agree with?
Been given multiple examples of how white people have impacted black people, right, in a certain way, which is why the way that black people do it back to white people really wouldn't matter because it's not racism. That's what you've been saying this like majority of the time. That's
what it sounds like. Yeah, that's kind of how I came to that conclusion.
I care about. Can I respond before Isak goes?
But based just on that, right, or the impact in general, right? I think that is where we primarily disagree because I don't think that the people that believe. Like Dejan's position, I don't think that we necessarily believe that there has to be a significant impact on the social group itself. I think that you can be racist as an individual towards an individual white person, regardless of the impact that you could have.
Yeah, so that's the misunderstanding is it's not really about impact. It's about understanding the phenomenon. That's what I care about mostly.
And that's and I think that where you primarily disagree with everyone is that you believe that you're correct. They believe that they're correct, and you believe that when they take their position,
that's trivial. Of course, everyone believes they're correct.
No. Like you're saying, hey, you guys just don't understand it, whereas like they do. They just disagree on the conclusion. And so it comes off a bit condescending.
Well, I think all of this disagreement is ultimately rhetorical, because we're not really arguing about the phenomenon here. We're talking about the label here. So the rhetorical argument that I'm making is that it's going to be more effective if we understand race not as just broadly discriminating against people on the basis of their skin color, on the basis of some phenotype, but understand it instead as a specific political project. That has a lot more. That has a lot more weight because when we equate hold on, let me finish real quick. When we equate the significant political project to just discrimination based upon phenotype, it's dragging down that historical power, that historical past that made it so relevant today.
So impact does matter.
But that would be the distinction between systemic racism and then racism. Or critically, are you?
No, man, I have to explain this again.
Wait, are you in the belief that racism is inherently systemic?
Not necessarily, depending on what you mean by systemic. So what I consider racism to be and why it matters so much is because it's perpetuating a caste system developed specifically in the 1400s, and that caste system developed in the 1400s was effective at creating global domination. That's why we take it so fucking seriously nowadays.
So the answer would be yes.
So this can be perpetuated systematically, it can be perpetuated systemically, and it can be perpetuated interpersonally. And there are going to be different activities that are not part of that historical project, but we care about race so much because of that historical project.
Okay, sure. So you do believe that it can be interpersonally. So
sure,
I don't understand that you don't believe that a person, like a white person, can experience racism. I don't understand that then. That kind of contradiction.
Wait, no. But the interpersonal perpetuation of the caste system is not going to be all directions.
Oh, exactly right there, though. So you do believe that racism is inherently systematic, like it has societal implications. Like, yeah, you're saying that when you're racist, what you're doing is perpetuating a caste system, right?
So when you say hold on, I'll clarify the differences to you. So because I think you're maybe misunderstanding my point a little bit. So when I'm saying an action is racist, I'm saying that it's perpetuating the racial caste system. Now that caste system, true, is societal. That's a society-wide, a global-wide type of phenomenon. But when I'm distinguishing between the two, I'm saying that interpersonal are just individual actions by one person to another that perpetuates that caste system. Systemic actions are processes and procedures involved in institutions or systems that perpetuate the caste system. And then systematic ones are ones that are intentional, are the systemic actions that are actually intentional.
Okay.
Well, can I respond to that? Like, or is anybody going to respond to that?
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, once again, that's the issue with that logic, right? You would still, even with your own idea of like how racism operates, you would still have to acknowledge that white people could face it if another group of people who are part of their own racial construct or part of that same racial construct are doing it towards white people. It's kind of weird. Like, I don't know why. Like, I said a simple question critically. Do you agree with the background? Everyone has the ability to be racist?
I don't know if you hear Murphy. I already clarified this earlier. Yeah, of course.
Okay.
And not to white people. So not to whiteness. That's the point.
Yeah. You haven't given like any like I don't know, logical justification, right? Or even historical, like I don't know, any historical evidence to back up the idea that white people can never face racism.
So meta-commentating and repeating what you think I have not done when I have done that, I can talk about how I've done that, is just not productive for the conversation. I can once again talk specifically about the specific writings by people from Portugal, from Spain, and how these were kind of the catalyst, as well from other explorers that went into like the Cape of Africa.
That's the issue, critically. You want to cherry pick particular examples in history, but you don't want to focus on the examples that I gave.
It's not cherry picking. It's not. There are historians.
So I'm going to ask you again, right?
Your meta commentary is really not necessary, but go ahead.
I'm going to ask you one more time. How did racism